In today's episode of the Shred Show podcast, I'm going to talk to you through one of the secrets when it comes to actually building muscle and burning body fat that no one thinks of. This thing is going to stop you in terms of getting injured, make sure you can make more gains whilst putting in the same amount of effort, and save a shitload of time. So I think very much in terms of building muscle and burning body fat in terms of two aspects. One, I want to get the most bang for my buck in terms of return on investment of time. And then secondly, I want to make sure that it's something we can do from a longevity point of view over a long period of time. Now, what I'm going to talk to you today about is what's called time under tension. Now, this is one of the keys to actually building muscle, burning body fat, and not to destroying your joints if you're able to do this for a long period of time. Now, what does time under tension mean? Pretty much what it says in the tin. So in terms of time under tension, what we want to be thinking about is when we're training a muscle, like how long is that muscle actually working and how long is it under tension? And there's a couple of little tactics I'm going to talk through in this podcast episode to explain how you can make the most from your training to make sure that you're using time under tension principles to build muscle, burn body fat, not get injured, and get the most bang for your buck from exercises. So point number one of what I want to talk to you about, maximizing time under tension training, is tempo. Now, tempo is huge when it comes to building muscle and also burning body fat. So if we think about how a muscle actually works, it contracts with muscular fibers, essentially almost like pulling each other and like pulling itself along. Now, when we think about how a lot of people will try and exercise or try and lift weights, they will try and move like with explosive force, momentum. So if we think from a bench press, they'll drop the weight down to their chest, bounce and power the weight up. Now, what's happening here is you're having a big muscular contraction at the bottom, and then you're using momentum and inertia to carry you through the rest of the range of motion. Now, this is going to minimize the amount of time under tension that's going to be happening because the only actual tension really is at the bottom when you're actually exerting the force, because you're essentially putting maximum load and then using the weight and the momentum to carry you through the rest of the rep. Now, this is where tempo can come in and be our friend here. So what we want to be doing is focusing on controlling the way down. So maybe say 2 seconds on the way down. So 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi down to your chest, slight pause, and then again up, contract up. And don't think about throwing the weight. Think about consciously contracting through your pec fibers and your triceps to push away rather than just doing a blunt force, push as hard as you can to get the weight off your chest. And 2 tips I really like for this is having a definite, like the thing about with everything, like arm training is a great one for this, is think about having a definitive start and a definitive end to every single rep. So if you're doing a bicep curl, for example, think about curling up to the top, having a pause, squeeze your bicep as hard as you can. And when you get to the bottom, have a slight pause, squeeze your tricep. This way, we're ensuring we're getting a full range of muscle through full range of movement through the muscle, which is going to elicit more hypertrophy. One of the biggest mistakes I see a lot of people doing, again, is just swinging and thinking about launching. So we want to really, really try and keep this controlled and think about that when we're trying to get muscles to contract and muscles to work hard. It's about having load on the muscle and load not on the joint, which brings me to the next point. So one thing I'm a fan of is trying to not necessarily lock out some of the exercises. So for example, like a leg press or like a pendulum squat like I did today, I won't fully lock out, like lock my knees out, because at that point, and the point in some exercises, which is how I teach exercise execution, is we want to try and keep the weight off of our like skeletal structure and have the weight on our muscles, which can be working to complete the tension. So if we think about a leg press, you don't necessarily want to fully lock out your knees. You want to try and keep some of the tension on your quads to maximize the amount of like muscle tissue you can try and grow there and how hard your muscle tissue is working, not how hard your connective tissue is working. So this is a really good way to focus on protecting your joint integrity as well. Talking about joint integrity, one thing I'm not a fan of for most people is using knee and elbow sleeves. I would try and avoid those where possible because you're essentially weakening the connective tissue around your knees and your elbows. The knees and your elbows should be able to function without those. If not, that's something you can work on, the things to work around that. Next up from that, in terms of something else I would highly suggest, if you find you're weak in a particular part of the movement, so let's take, for example, a pendulum squat, which we did today, I would look to, for example, a lot of people very weak at the bottom of a squat position, I would look to add a pause. So if you're doing hack squat, leg press, anything where you find you're really weak in a certain range of motion, a bench press, When you get to the bottom, pause, 1, 2, and then up. And that resetting every rep is going to force you to work hard in that position where you're weak and will allow you to get stronger. And one of the things we really want to focus on is thinking about, we want to try and focus on getting stronger where we're weak, because that's where our greatest return on investment in our time and our greatest return on improving our body is going to be, because that's going to be the, you're only strong as your weakest link, and that's going to be the weakest link that's holding back your progress. So when you identify an area where you're weak, you almost want to spend more time there to try and improve it. And this is one of the ways that time under tension training works very well, because you can very quickly identify where you have weak spots within your training. So one thing I'll say with time under tension training, we want to think about also not just doing crazy and shitloads amount of volume. So if you train exercises accurately, and by accurately I mean with good form, and you work very hard, like you're lifting a weight to the point you can't do another rep, then you shouldn't be needing to do 30, 40 sets in a workout. So generally I have like a 2-set method with my own training, where I'll probably do 2 sets of everything to failure, because I have that skill and ability to push myself to a very high level. And once you have that, you then don't actually have to do so much work, because you get more bang for your buck and more return on investment in terms of what you're doing and why you're doing it, and the effects of time under tension training can be seen from there onwards. So big take home point for anyone listening to this right now is to make sure that when you go into the gym, think about tempo. So your rep speed, how quickly you're moving. Use a stopwatch if you want, put that on the floor. Very, very good way to monitor that. And then think about identifying where you're weak in a movement, and then try and focus on getting stronger in there. That will make a very, very big difference. And then next up from that, one thing I think about is in terms of exercise selection. Try and use exercises that you find you connect well with, and that you can actually feel what's working. And something that's very important to understand, even if you're a beginner listening to this, is consciously understanding what muscles you're trying to train within each exercise. So if you, for example, understand with the bench press, I'm trying to train my chest, with your brain, think about, I'm contracting my pec fibers to drive this bar forward. That neurological thought process will make a big difference in terms of your training and improving your physique. Same when you're training shoulders, you're looking to try and train the side delts, the side part of your shoulders. Think about consciously trying to contract through that, and that will aid in terms of your muscle building ability. Lastly thing I want to say is set yourself a higher standard for yourself today. So one of the reasons people don't make progress themselves is that they half-ass things. So question is in there, going like when it comes to exercise execution and like training, all this shit, like, does it really matter? It's a question I want to think. Does it really matter? Like, you see fucking idiots in there, like basically having a like geometry set out, measuring equipment, and like being super anal. It's like, the key for you actually getting results, and the 95% of the results you're going to get, is turning up, working really hard, and being consistent with those 2 things. If you keep doing those 2 things over a period of time with generally the right guidance and generally the right program, which I can give you, my team at CJ Coaching can give you, will be more than just generally, but obviously we'll give you a precise plan, then you will get results. It is that simple. And this isn't fucking Elon Musk building Tesla, building SpaceX, putting a man on the moon. We can help you achieve whatever you want. So thought process today, time and tension training is killer. If you want help with your own fitness, physique, and goals, if you hit the link below the podcast video, you can book in a free stress call with myself and CJ Coaching team. And make sure you leave a 5-star review on the podcast. If you're listening to us on iTunes, or subscribe on YouTube, and we'll see you in the next episode.